On January 15, 1967, the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs went head-to-head in the first ever matchup between two rival football leagues, the AFL and the NFL. In today's video, we'll take a look back at how the championship game came together and what would eventually become known as the first Super Bowl. Before we get started, I just want to say welcome to All Sports History. This is a channel where you'll find many sports documentaries on sports leagues like the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, and much more. So please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell if you don't want to miss any of those. Okay, let's get back to today's video. The Super Bowl, the NFL's marquee matchup between the AFC champion and the NFC champion, has become one of the biggest sporting events in the world, with over 100 million people watching in the United States alone. But it didn't start out that way. In fact, when the AFL started in 1960 as a rival league to the already established NFL, few thought the upstart AFL would last long enough to give the NFL much competition. Even the NFL themselves, who successfully outlasted several other rival leagues, didn't consider the AFL much of a threat. Well, at least initially. However, the AFL teams managed to prosper by selecting castaway players from the NFL, who then went on to have great success. Before long, the AFL had nearly caught up to the NFL in terms of on-field quality, and the two leagues began bidding wars over high-quality prospective college players and free agents. Originally, there was an informal agreement between the two leagues that one league would not try to poach players that were already under contract by the other league. But it didn't take long for this informal agreement to break down when, in early 1966, Pete Gogolak, a kicker for the AFL's Buffalo Bills, was lured away by the NFL's New York Giants, even though Gogolak was already under contract with the Bills. The AFL owners were so angered by this that several AFL teams immediately went out and signed under contract NFL players, which included 8 top-tier quarterbacks. Both sides, eventually tired of the bidding wars, sat down to negotiate a formal agreement between the two leagues. What came out of it was a deal to have a shared draft order between both the AFL and NFL teams, as well as the eventual merger of the two leagues by 1969. But before then, they established an AFL-NFL championship game that would be played at the end of both league seasons. The first AFL-NFL championship game was played after the 1966 season and was held on January 15, 1967. The Kansas City Chiefs represented the AFL and the Green Bay Packers represented the NFL. The Chiefs finished their season with 11 wins, 2 losses, and 1 tie, and had just beaten the Buffalo Bills in the AFL League Championship game 31-7. Kansas City featured future Hall of Famers like quarterback Len Dawson, linebacker Bobby Bell, defensive tackle Buck Buchanan, safety Johnny Robinson, and cornerback Emmett Thomas. The team was also led by future Hall of Fame head coach, the iconic Hank Stram, as well as Hall of Fame owner Lamar Hunt, who fittingly was the main architect behind the AFL's inception after having been rejected by the NFL as a potential franchise owner several years before. So there was a lot more riding on this game for Lamar Hunt than just the bragging rights. Switching over to Green Bay, they came into the AFL-NFL Championship having won 12 games and only 2 losses. They defeated the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL Championship in a close game 2 weeks before, 34-27. The Packers featured future Hall of Famers like quarterback Bart Starr, cornerback Herb Adderley, defensive end Willie Davis, linebacker Ray Nitschke, and running back Paul Hornung, who actually didn't play in the Super Bowl due to a pinched nerve. Packers were led by legendary head coach Vince Lombardi, who in just a couple of years of being hired turned the entire franchise around and into perennial NFL championship winners. The official name for the championship game was the first World Championship game AFL vs NFL. This name was given by the NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle. However, the name understandably was a mouthful to say and not easily marketable. It was actually Lamar Hunt, seen here after having lost a bet with a ball boy, who came up with the unofficial name Super Bowl after seeing his son play with a toy called the Super Ball. According to Hunt's son, his father said that we should use a name like Super Bowl, but then quickly backtracked and said, "Actually, that's not a very good name, and we can come up with something better." But obviously the name stuck and has been used officially for every Super Bowl since Super Bowl III in 1969. As for the site of the game, the Los Angeles Coliseum was selected just 7 weeks before the game was to be held. Prior to the game starting, both sides were under intense pressure from their respective leagues, not just to win the game, but to crush the other side to show how one league was superior over the other. Frank Gifford, who is one of the broadcasters for the game, said in an interview before kickoff with Packers head coach Vince Lombardi, quote, "Lombardi was holding onto my arm and shaking like a leaf. It was incredible." Kansas City appeared to be just as nervous. As Chiefs linebacker E.J. Holliff said, the Chiefs were scared and guys were in the tunnel throwing up. But I'm pretty sure that's probably just water they're standing on. Well, probably. An interesting compromise was made involving the game balls that were used during the World Championship game. Since the AFL and the NFL used two different sized balls, it was agreed upon that both teams would use their respective league balls when they were on offense.
That's what she said!
The AFL used a Spalding JV5 ball, and the NFL used Wilson's signature ball, the Duke, which the NFL still uses to this day. The officiating crew was mixed as well, using referees from both leagues. At the start of the game, both teams traded points on each of their first possessions, but the Packers took an early lead when they drove 80 yards down the field and scored on a touchdown pass by Bart Starr to Max McGee. The Chiefs would answer back early in the second quarter with a 66-yard drive and a touchdown pass by Len Dawson to Curtis McClinton, tying the game at 7 points apiece. The tie wouldn't last long, however, as the Packers once again drove down the field on the very next possession, scoring on Jim Taylor's run into the end zone. After being sacked on the next drive, Chiefs quarterback Len Dawson completed 4 consecutive completions, totaling 58 yards. This set up a field goal attempt for 31 yards, which Mike Mercer completed, making it 14-10 Packers at halftime. On the first drive of the second half, Len Dawson threw an interception that eventually led to the Packers scoring on a touchdown run after the turnover. After the game, Bart Starr said that this was the biggest play of the game as the Packers never looked back. Green Bay would go on to shut out the Chiefs in the second half while scoring twice more to win the game 35-10. And with that, Vince Lombardi became the first head coach to win what would eventually become known as the first Super Bowl. The game was simulcast on 2 networks, CBS and NBC, and this was due to CBS having the rights to broadcast NFL games and NBC having the rights to AFL games. While each network used their own announcers, the NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle, who by this point also had authority over the AFL, mandated that NBC couldn't use their own camera and tech crew and had to use CBS broadcast feed instead. He felt since the game was being held at the Rams' NFL home stadium, the LA Coliseum, it should operate as an NFL broadcast. The game was the first and only Super Bowl not to be sold out, with about a third of available seats empty. That's of course until the 2021 Super Bowl, which will only have about 25,000 fans in attendance due to the global pandemic. Also, because the first Super Bowl didn't sell out, the game was actually blacked out in the Los Angeles area due to local blackout rules. In a strange circumstance, the original game broadcast footage has actually been lost. It was common practice back in the 1960s for TV networks to wipe out old tapes and reuse them once an event or program had completed. Also, the cost of tapes at the time were extremely expensive, so many networks reused the tapes to save money. No one foresaw at the time just how valuable saving the original tapes would become, but in recent years an effort was made by NFL Films to stitch together all known existing footage of the game. On January 15, 2016, on the 49th anniversary of the game, NFL Films and the NFL Network debuted a restored version of the game, complete with all 145 plays from the Super Bowl. The first World Championship game also faced criticism over what some felt was an overpriced ticket to get in. One ticket cost between $10 to $12, which would be roughly $94 in today's money. And if you think that's bad, by comparison, the average Super Bowl ticket today costs thousands of dollars and upwards of 10 grand on the resellers market. And for those kind of prices, you'd expect to see amazing in-game entertainment. But by comparison, the first Super Bowl had extremely modest offerings. The game featured marching bands from Grambling State and the University of Arizona, where they physically created the shape of the continental United States. Then, the Anaheim High School drill team placed banners of each AFL and NFL team where their geographical location was. Other acts included trumpeter Al Hirt and the release of 300 pigeons and 10,000 balloons. But most famously and most awesomely, a jetpack demonstration was performed by the Bell Rocket Airmen. Post-first Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs would return to the championship game a few years later in Super Bowl IV. The Chiefs would defeat the Minnesota Vikings 23-7, awarding head coach Hank Stram and owner Lamar Hunt their long-awaited Super Bowl trophy. Speaking of which, the Packers once again returned to the Super Bowl the following year in 1968. They'd go on to defeat the Oakland Raiders 33-14, giving Vince Lombardi the first 2 Super Bowl wins. The NFL would later honor Lombardi by renaming the championship trophy to the Vince Lombardi Trophy in 1970. So what did you guys think about Super Bowl I and how the TV networks erased the tapes? Would you pay $10,000 to go to a Super Bowl today? Let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and feel free to share this video with anyone else who might also enjoy it. For more sports history, check out my website at allsportshistory.com And be sure to follow my social media pages, which I posted the links to in the description below. And thanks for watching.